Okay, so as you can tell from the title, are incels misunderstood? In order for us to, it's not vodka, actually, tomato. Shout outs to you, Sarah. It's not actually vodka. It's Jack on the Rocks that was brought to me from India, actually. So I very much appreciate it. What's up, Michael? How you doing? For the algo, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And okay, here we go. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to define what an incel is before we even start talking about it. Because here at Big Brother Neo's podcast, I don't want to just talk and say random things. I want to give definitions so that we're all on the same page when we do have these particular topics, right? So let's start with the first one, understanding incels. Oh, actually, yeah, turn this ticker off. We do it live, people. Okay, understanding incels. An incel is a term that stands for involuntary celibate. It refers to individuals, typically men, who express frustration or resentment due to their inability to find a romantic or sexual partner despite desiring one. Now, that's something that I want to make sure I stress out to all of you, because usually when you're listening to a podcast or a live stream, you might be driving, you might be doing some dishes, you might be doing some housework. I could just be background noise to all of you. So you might not actually be physically seeing what's on the screen right now. So I want to repeat the definition one more time because I think it's really important to get that across to all of you. So an incel is a term that stands for involuntary celibate. It refers to individuals, typically men, who express frustration or resentment due to their inability to find a romantic or sexual partner despite desiring one. Now, that's really interesting. Key point, desire. Exactly. Thank you for that, Franklin. And that's true. The key point is desire. It's very easy for somebody to say, well, they could just pay for sex. Why don't they just do that? You're right. They can. Well, depending on your socioeconomic status, you might not even have the $200 and disposable income to even do something as simple as that. So, what I will say is that it's not enough just to have sex with somebody. It's not enough just to get your privates wet. You know, like there is very much a desire to want to actually be with someone, to feel loved, to feel the hug and the affection of another human being. You know, things like that are really important. And unfortunately, not everybody is capable of getting that. So, what did you say? Sarah and Ashley say incels aren't a thing. I'm an incel. I can't get women that don't understand. Jorge, I'm very sorry to hear that. And you know what? If that's the case, then this stream is for you. Again, I wouldn't really villainize any people that say that have their own perspectives. Perspectives exist, opinions exist for a reason. Incel isn't a catch-all term. You know what I mean? It varies on the individual. So I'm hoping that today, you know, if you're going to listen to this, that you can get an understanding, and hopefully anyone else can get an understanding of what I mean when I speak about incels, right? So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to let me just, I'm sorry guys, I'm still a little new to this. Okay, let me just hide that. So I want to display some of the characteristics here, right? So here, these are just like two characteristics that I decided to like focus on, but I will be doing more. So social isolation. Many incels may struggle with social interactions and relationships, feeling disconnected or marginalized from broader social circles. That's a very important thing to be able to distinguish. I need you all to understand this. A lot of the times, physical appearance is a factor, but it is not always the determining factor. There are times where you might have just not been socially calibrated properly. You know what I mean? Maybe when you were a kid, you know, you didn't play around with other kids. You know, you might have been isolated. Your parents might have put a screen in front of your face, and you sort of just became this product of the internet, right? Where you didn't necessarily interact with others. So when you got a little older, and because you weren't socially calibrated properly, you might have started getting a little awkward. You know what I mean? Which is really sad and unfortunate when you really stop and think about it. So I would just say that I don't want to just talk about the issue. I want to talk about possible solutions. You know, I guess you can call these prescriptions, right? I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you know, I'm just talking. This is just entertainment. If I say something, it's because I typically mean it. So you can take this as a prescription and say what it is. Social isolation is a big thing. So how do you practice escaping from social isolation? Well, there's a couple of things you can do. One, you can find groups of people in common with things that align with who you are. You know, like if you like going to the gym, or if you like playing video games, or if you're a runner, or you like singing or dancing, you know, there's always communities available that you can join and interact with, so that you can start practicing around other people that are like-minded. You want these people to be like-minded. You want them to sort of share your values. It makes it really easy for you to end up becoming friendlier with them, and in the process you're practicing your ability to speak to people. Something as simple as saying hi or waving to somebody, and that in itself can be a victory, you know, because it's very difficult. Not everybody feels comfortable saying hi. Some people put their eyes down when they walk by you. You know what I mean? They might not know what to say. They might not know when to interject with something. So that's really important. Let me read some of these comments here real quick. Uh, so Neo, this is my niche. Yo, that's what's up, man. What do you got, Jorge? Thank you. I'm unattractive and I'm 5'4", and I've been ridiculed for my height by coworkers and women have tried. I've approached over 100 women listening to pickup coaches, and I became black pilled. Okay, so before I get to the next point, I'm going to address this comment real quick. So I will be talking about height. Height does unfortunately play a factor a lot of the times. Not everybody is genetically gifted with like being over 6 feet tall. You know, I think it's only about 10% of the US population that's over that height. You know what I mean? So what happens to the other 90%? Well, if you go to the real world, like outside in the real world, height does play a factor, but it is not solely the determining factor, because you'll see couples of all types of heights. You know, you'll see tall men that are with short women, you'll see short women that are with short men, you'll see tall women that are with short men, and you'll see tall women that are with tall men. So it really does vary. And as far as listening to like pickup coaches and becoming black pilled, I understand getting your excuse me, sorry. I understand looking for information and wanting to actually find like-minded people that you can listen to that can possibly help you. The problem with pickup coaches, I don't have anything against PUAs personally. Like, let them do their thing. It's all a hustle at the end of the day. Everybody needs to make their money. But pickup artists don't really teach you how to be in long-term relationships. The only thing they do is primarily teach you how to get laid now. They make you Mr. Right Now. They don't make you Mr. Long term. So that's what I would say when it comes to that. You know, as far as being black pilled, we'll touch upon that soon. And thank you for being excited for the stream. I appreciate that. Franklin says, Jorge, you are subjecting yourself. Subjecting yourself. Okay. I need to laugh at them. It's all about passion. Okay. So let me get to the next one here. So negative self-perceptions. Okay. This is an important one. So incels often harbor low self-esteem and negative self-perceptions, feeling inadequate or undesirable due to their inability to attract romantic partners. So to Jorge's point earlier, how he spoke about him being 5'4", and, you know, kind of just being invisible, right? You know, that's really horrible. And oftentimes you can feel inadequate. And when you feel inadequate, there is something that happens to your psyche, you know, outside of the physical body. There's a lot of different things that end up happening to you. Based, I see you in the StreamYard. I'm gonna open this up in about like another 20 minutes. So if you want to hang tight, feel free. But I'll start letting people in about 20 minutes. I just want to get through this real quick. So when you're feeling inadequate, you do definitely have to do something about that. These are things that you have to work on, right? We can't just cry me a river forever and then expect things to get better. You do have to take an active interest in your life. You know, if you're not your own personal advocate, no one is going to be. Like, realistically, no one knows you anything. Nobody cares about you. Your friends care about you. Your family care about you. But there will be points in whence you have to advocate for yourself and take yourself and pull yourself out of perdition, essentially. You know, if you're going to rise to the heavens, if you're going to rise from the ashes like a phoenix, these are things that you have to want to do for yourself, because someone can show you the door, but they can't make you walk through it. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So these are things that you, if you do have like negative self-perceptions about yourself, these are things that you inevitably want to work on. Raging Tomato says, woohoo, excited to see you and Base both discuss this. Yeah, no, totally, 100%. Okay, so let me get to the next one. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, guys, we do this live, and I'm still learning. Okay, so I have a checklist here. Not this one. Here we go. By the way, this incel checklist symptoms, that this character that you see on the screen, I made that through AI. So shout outs to Copilot from Microsoft Edge. It's it actually helped me make this image. Okay, cool. So let's get to the first one, right? So blame external factors. Incels may attribute their lack of success in dating or relationships to external factors such as physical appearance, social standards, or perceived unfairness, right? Okay, so what does that mean? What do we mean when we say things like physical appearance, social standards, or perceived unfairness, right? Well, again, there's a complaint that often happens when things aren't going your way, when you perceive things to not be going your way. I'll actually leave this up just so that you can read along with me. um it can feel unfair, like Jorge said earlier about his height. Things like that might play a factor, but your height doesn't have to be a detriment solely on itself. I see a lot of short kings in the gym that do their thing, and granted, even though they're short, working out, getting yourself in better shape, it's not just about looks maxing and feeling physically good. It also matters because it helps you on a psychological level as well. You get these endorphins in you, you start feeling good. They sort of function as natural antidepressants. And being in good shape is its own reward. You want to have a strong, healthy body. A healthy body creates a healthy and powerful mind. That as a result, you can articulate yourself better. You can put yourself in better situations. And these things matter, and unfortunately, that's the way the world works. These things certainly 100% matter. Hold on, let me just take a sip of this. Okay. Oh, snap. Shout out to Tomato, to Mama Tomato. What's up, Mama Tomato? I hope all is well. Shout outs to you and your family. Uh Neo and I are gonna have a good talk. I hope so, based Oracle. 100%, man. Let's see. Base Oracle GTSY. I don't know what GTSY stands for. Okay. Roar. What's up, chat? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just throwing all of these out. Yo, shout outs to Primal, man. How you doing? Okay. So, one second. Yeah, I'll give a warning here. Okay. So, sorry about that, guys. Still not fully used to this. I have a couple of slides here and things that I want to show you everybody. So we're definitely gonna get into this. By the way, real quick, if you haven't already, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel if you're liking the content. I'm working really hard on this stuff, and I want it to like be a thing. You know what I mean? So let's get back to our slide here. The next one, online community engagement. Many incels congregate in online communities or forums where they can share their experiences, frustrations, and beliefs with others who understand their struggles. Now, this is typically where, how can I explain this? This is typically where echo chambers start to happen. There's a confirmation bias. You have other people that feel your struggle, and because they're feeling your struggle, you sort of band together, right? That's kind of what Elliot Rodger did, and like Alec Manassian. Those are the two most infamous incels, and these are the ones that actually caused horrific. They did horrific crimes. You know what I mean? It's really unfortunate because those two men alone, those two males alone, caused a lot of destruction that kind of gave a bad name to like average dudes that are just having a hard time. And by the way, I want you all to know this is not a stream where I'm like defending incels or anything like that. I believe that some of them are 100% harmful. You know what I mean? But I don't believe the average person that's defined as an incel is that type of person. You know what I mean? There's extremes in every group. If you're in political groups, whether you identify on the left or on the right, there's extremes on those sides. There's extreme sides to feminism. The manosphere has its extreme sides. Red pill, black pill, all these pills that everybody overdoses on have their extremes. So I want you to be all aware of that. Okay, so you brought your mama to the party. Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Here showing support. I love that. I'll help you, no worries. I appreciate that, Franklin. Franklin's the name of one of my best friends, by the way. So shout outs to that name. what you say, band of brothers in the style of incels. Yeah, so basically, these online communities that form, like these Reddit forums and everything of that nature, um, there is utility to it. Sometimes it's good, but sometimes it's also really bad. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to live in a bubble. You don't want to be a sycophant. You don't want to live in this confirmation bias. You want to have your own opinions and your own perspectives. Okay, so I'll read the next one. Victim mentality. Some incels adapt a victim mentality, perceiving themselves as unjustly treated by society or by women who do not reciprocate their romantic or sexual interests. Now, this is an important one. Okay, a lot of people go into the victim mentality, and I need you guys to be aware of something. Okay, I've seen a lot of stuff on these like forums and on these channels and everything where people will constantly talk about oh, it's not fair. Why aren't these women with me? You know what I mean? Like they should be with me. I deserve to have somebody. And no, you don't. You don't deserve anyone, and no one deserves you. Okay. You're gonna have people in this world that you vibe with and people that you don't. If you can find yourself to be in a situation where you're with somebody that actually cares about you, awesome. But those things have to be built up over time. They don't just happen. You guys got to understand something. Women get hit on so often. Women are so spoiled for choice. You can't possibly expect them to hook up with like every single dude that hits on them. That would be ridiculous. What if you complained that you deserve a woman and you ended up getting a girlfriend, right? And now, through your definition and your standard of you deserve somebody, if somebody else feels that way, then your girlfriend should belong to them as well, right? You know, like if you get hit on 10, 15 times a day, you can't expect the woman to sleep with all these people. They have to be picky for a reason. There's multiple reasons for it. There's reproductive reasons, there's safety reasons, there's like STD, sexually transmitted reasons. Like you can't just hook up with every like Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes along your path. You have to kind of put limitations and restrictions on people. You know, you can give yourself a fighting chance by, simply working on yourself and socially calibrating yourself. Looks aren't the only thing that matter. Your personality inevitably inevitably does play a factor. Okay. Yeah, I know. I remember you telling me about that, bro. Yeah, no, definitely. And your perspective will be interesting on this one. One common crossover between incels and some of those dudes that they did the bad things are mental health problems. Yeah, mental health kind of goes hand in hand with that, right? Because there's a lot of people that are also suffering through like mental illness. And I will say, whenever you see these like homeless people that are outside, you really have to be careful and kind of sympathetic in a way because if you see them talking to themselves, they're not crazy for the sake of being crazy. They're suffering from something. Typically high levels of schizophrenia. These things can play a factor in them destroying their lives inadvertently. You know what I mean? Because some of them are so delusional because of their mental illness, they end up becoming their own biggest problem. They can't hold down jobs. They're always hearing things, so people perceive them as being unnerving to be around, so they don't want to be around them. There's a lot of things that like play factors when it comes to this stuff. You know what I'm saying? You're a victim of cold French fries from McDonald's. Yo, word. I completely agree with you on that. All right, we got one more. Hold on, where is it? Oh Lord, I put so many checklists here. Okay. Oh, this is a an interesting one here. Sorry, I just had to take a sip real quick. Okay. Radicalization. Okay. In extreme cases, incels may become radicalized and adopt extremist ideologies or engage in violent rhetoric or actions, posing a potential threat to themselves and others. Now, this is the danger of getting involved in these types of communities. You know what I mean? Radicalization is a very real thing that happens, unfortunately. And you have to really be careful because it's very easy to get sucked up in these echo chambers and feel justified in what you're doing. You're sort of the main character of your own story ultimately. So you feel like like it's all on you basically. It's on you to complete this task, right? And when you get involved with other radical people, you yourself can be radicalized. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. When I first started listening to like red pill content, it happened during a time where I was going through like a bad breakup, right? And when that happened, I started getting a little radicalized. I'm not gonna lie. I was on some like, oh, these chicks ain't shit. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm the prize, blah, blah. All the talking points that like you constantly hear on the internet. And I had to like tone myself down. I started becoming displeasing to be around. And that was really uncomfortable because I have people that I care about in my life, that are good people. And um it can be very easy to get radicalized once you're okay. One of the best ways I can say this is that once you've reached your lowest point, you're subject to the greatest of changes. So if you hit rock bottom, if you hit a point where you feel like you're at a point of no return, you're going to be subject to change. And these changes often take the form of you getting into communities that might not necessarily hold your best interests at heart. If anything, they want to bring them down with them because hurt people ultimately. And it's really, really unfortunate. And it sucks that that happens. Okay, so I wanted to read this comment. 6'8" and handsome says, speaking as a guy who's had it easy with women and seen what I've seen and approached and have had women cheat on their husbands and boyfriends for me, telling me that I'm slightly black pilled. Um, I mean, wait, hold on. I that last part I didn't quite get. Hold on, maybe I'm just getting slow at my old age. I'm a boomer after all. Well, I'm almost practically a boomer. Okay, so you said speaking as a guy who has had it easy with women and seen what I've seen and approached and had women and have had women cheat on their husbands and boyfriends for me telling me things I'm slightly black pilled. That last part has me a little confused. But yeah, your experience is going to be a little different. You know what I mean than everybody else's. Again, like I'm kind of coming from a privileged standpoint as well. Like I'm 6'1". I'm like 200 plus pounds. I'm a big dude. You know what I mean? So I don't suffer the height issue. You know what I'm saying? But I have had my own issues. You know, we've all kind of experienced our own like artificial inceldom as we were younger. Um, you're the participation ribbon. Yeah. So okay, here's the deal, right? Where is this? Sorry, guys. Okay, so this is another slide that I wanted to bring up. And by the way, this is also an AI generated evil man. It looks pretty creepy. It kind of looks like Freddy Krueger with a hoodie, right? So, in order for us to decide whether incels are harmful or evil, right, we kind of had to define what being evil is, and we kind of had to see what the characteristics of being evil are, right? So, what I'm gonna do is bring up where is it? Is this one? Okay, so this is the definition of evil, or what I've looked up at least. So, broadly speaking, evil refers to actions, behaviors, or intentions that are profoundly immoral, wicked, or harmful. It encompasses a wide range of manifestations from individual acts of cruelty to systematic injustices and atrocities committed on a large scale. Right now, whether or not you feel that you relate to that definition of evil is kind of moot, you know, because a lot of people say that evil and morality are subjective based on what country you live in, what religion you are. So these things often matter, but there is objectively a difference between right and wrong. And you'll feel that objectivity when you've been wronged. And even though it might not be perceived to someone else as wrong, it doesn't mean that it wasn't wrong to you because you are, again, the main character of your own story. Shout outs to Xavier, man. How you doing, my brother from another mother? I hope all is going well. Okay, so uh, okay. So by this definition alone, right? Can you say incels are evil? Right. Now let's read the actual um characteristics of being evil, right? I'm gonna go through these real quick because I do have people that want to get on the panel and you know, we're gonna have conversations as well. So evil characteristics. So you have malice, right? Evil often involves a deliberate intention to cause harm or suffering to others driven by a malevolence or ill will. So your average incel, which is just basically a dude that has a hard time getting laid, or maybe he wasn't genetically blessed with like good appearances or height or even smell, um, there isn't necessarily malice on their end. What I think happens is that again, you can be radicalized based off of your situation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you and your in itself are evil because of that particular thing. You know, malice comes from something internal. You wanting to be evil and cause harm upon others. It's something that I really think people are born as, honestly. Now you could become evil. You could be what I call the sympathetic villain, right? Where, you know, a great wrong was done to you. So now you feel justified in your actions, you know, or you have, you know, villains in movies, for example, tend to be the most interesting characters because they sometimes they have compelling stories that people tend to relate to. And because of that, it makes the project and movie more interesting. Um, I'm not evil. I'm just drawn that way. Yeah. So back to this, right? Malice again. You'd have to attribute your average incel to be a malicious person if that were the case, and I don't think your average incel is that way. I believe extremes exist, and your trauma responses are going to dictate ultimately what you end up doing as well. So then deception is the next one. Evil may entail deceit, manipulation, or dishonesty with individuals or entities misleading others for personal gain or to achieve nefarious ends. Now, is your average guy being deceptive? That's another thing that you have to really ask yourself. And I don't think a lot of them are. They might say things you don't like. They might even say really cringeworthy things, or they might say something debaucherous because they're feeling disenfranchised, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? They feel like society has like sort of betrayed them in some strange way. But that doesn't make them deceitful. That just makes them, what's the right way of saying this? It makes their statements truthful to them, even though polite society won't see it that way. It's their lived experience, and I don't often like discounting people's lived experiences because people will say, "Oh, that's anecdotal." Well, I mean, unfortunately, and the reality of the matter is that statistics are just anecdotal examples. You get a large sample size of people, and you ask them a series of questions of their lived experiences, and you compilate all that data together, and you get a statistic. So statistics are still anecdotes if you really stop and think about it. So you can't always just basically deny someone's lived experiences. Okay, so what's the next one here? Uh, Okay, corruption. Evil can entail the pervasion of distortion or moral principles with individuals or entities engaged in unethical or immoral behavior for personal gain or power. Now, again, are these people corrupted? Now, you could say some of them are. I would say that. I think that's sort of like a part of radicalization in a way. You know what I mean? Um, your moral principles assemble themselves throughout the course of your existence. You're not the same person you are today that you were yesterday, but your experiences often will lead to who you end up being. So corruption, if you feel that they're corrupted, there is a sense of corruption that does happen, unfortunately, in these circles. Which kind of goes hand in hand with the radicalization that I was talking about earlier. And let's just read the last one so we can get this over with. I'll give my final thoughts and then I'll open up the panels to people. Okay, so injustice. Evil often involves actions or systems that perpetuate unfairness, inequality, or oppression, denying individuals or groups their rights, dignity, or opportunities. Now, I will say this: a lot of incels feel like an injustice of some sort has been done to them. Now, whether that's true or not, or whether it's self-inflicted, varies based off of the individual. I would certainly say. Um, but feeling an injustice, feeling a harm that was done to you can often lead you down the path of destruction, inevitably, if you don't come back from it. You either become the person that was hurt, and as a result, you don't want to see people get hurt anymore, or you become so hurt that you want to hurt other people because you feel that it's the only way. You feel that they hurt me, so I have to hurt back. It's a give and take, right? It's an eye for an eye, I guess you could say. But what's the problem with that? It leaves the whole world blind. And in case you guys are wondering, I am a nerd, and this is a Zelda mug. As you can see, this is the Master Sword. Um, sorry. Okay, so you said no, because of date. Hold on a second. I got to look through some of these real quick. Aren't we all just a bunch of statistics? Yeah, of course we are, Sarah. 100%. That's why I keep saying that. Like whenever somebody says, "Oh, this is anecdotal," it's like, yeah, but everything's anecdotal. If you asked 10 people, no, if you asked 100 people, hey, how old were you when you lost your virginity? And 50 of them said, oh, I was 14 or 15. Then you have a statistical likelihood that half the people in that age range are going to lose their virginity. But you still got that from asking people questions. So it's still their lived experience, which I always find funny. Statistics does not mean shit if there is a generalization. Yeah, that is true. But generalization and statistics often kind of go hand in hand, but also not really in a strange way. Um, let me see. Data shows 65% of couples meet from online and are known competition. What? Yeah, competition is super competitive online. It's no surprise to see more incels as social media becomes more and more dependent. There were none. There were none. I think you meant. Well, social media has 100% changed the game. I will say that. And that's just also kind of a part of the game. Unfortunately, like that's gonna happen. I met my girlfriend on a dating app. Just so you all know. So they do have utility. They can be useful if utilized the right way. But I would still encourage you to go out and talk and socialize with people in the real world. You know, it's not just about being online, because your online self is never really your true self. You know, you have different versions of yourself that you portray to the world. So when you're in like polite society, you're not going to necessarily be the exact same way. You know what I mean? But again, it does have utility. So um, no, you know, because of data. Well, yeah, data, statistics, anecdotes, they're all kind of hand in hand. You're gathering information. That's what it is. Figures don't lie, but liars. I like that actually. Exactly. Based. Bullseye. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna I'm gonna open the panels up.